Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am rising today in the House to speak to this new legislation being proposed, Bill 65, an act respecting the Family Income Security Act. And much has already been said about what is contained in these proposed in this proposed legislation, and of course there are some things that I would support and that myself and the Green Caucus have been pushing for. However, unfortunately, I would argue that this bill does not go far enough in terms of where we need to be in addressing income security for New Brunswickers. People across the province, and I specifically hear from people in my riding of Memram, Cook, Tantramar, they're struggling. And not everyone is in the same situation, but many are struggling to get by. And not all of them are on social assistance, of course, but those who do have experience in dealing with social development, who do have experience being on or applying for social assistance, and especially if they have a disability, their experiences are, I would say, overwhelmingly negative. And I guess there's a bit of a bias. Those who come to me maybe need more help, but the struggle is that, well, there are many struggles, I guess. One is that the amount provided for in social assistance is simply not enough. And the leader of the Green Party and the leader of my caucus, he already outlined some of the figures that we're talking about. But it's simply untenable to be able to pay rent, buy food, to just cover basic necessities. When receiving as little as $571 a month or $705 a month, and again the onus put on people, especially people with disabilities, to prove they have a disability and then still be told, well, not enough of a disability to receive the extended benefit. And so I would urge the government to rethink their approach, because this is an incremental approach, and incrementalism is not getting us where we need to go fast enough. And frankly, we need to be moving towards a guaranteed livable income. And we proposed that start with people who have disabilities and start with a basic income to ensure that basic needs are met. And what we're really talking about here are human rights. And a lot of people in our province are not having their human rights to housing, for example, met. And this is directly linked to this. People's experiences with social development and having to constantly prove what's happening in terms of their income, in terms of their disability, and it's very burdensome. And again, when we're talking about people with this level of income, many people don't have access to internet. I don't know anyone who has access to a fax machine anymore, but the internet, scanning documents, constantly needing to provide these, and I know that the workload for a lot of caseworkers is so overwhelming that they don't even meet with my constituents in person. They do phone calls. So I've actually said before, I would recommend meeting with this person and making sure they're able to fill out the paperwork. Sometimes literacy levels are an issue, and I've been told, no, I only do phone calls with constituents. I have too many people in my caseload. So that is a major issue. And so I would argue there needs to be investment on that end as well in terms of the system, but there needs to be investment in making sure that people have enough to live on. And frankly, the amounts that are there now, that's not the case. There are also policies that could be changed. Some of them are in regulations, so that could be done without even needing to change the legislation. And one of them that is very important is the household income policy, and ensuring that people can live together and get married, for example, and not lose their income. And this disproportionately impacts women with disabilities, and I've spoken to many of them, and this is something that many people have been calling for to be changed. And for example, the New Brunswick Coalition of Persons with Disabilities has spoken about this, and we just had hearings on the Accessibility Committee looking at what issues are here in our province for people with disabilities, and this is absolutely one of the things that needs to be changed. So again, I would argue that this incrementalism is not moving fast enough to actually address the human rights that people should have access to, like housing and like being able to be with their loved ones. There are people I know who have decided to not get married due to this policy, or they did move in with their significant other and they had their income taken away. They had benefits taken away. And there's a real, it seems like a punitive approach to people on social assistance, going after them, not letting them be on the housing list if they owe a few $100s, really actively going after people who basically don't have any money to pay back social development, and they'll owe social development. We don't see that level of pursuit going after big corporations who may not pay their taxes, who default on things. We really see an imbalance of who has the power here. And the other thing, when we think about income security and basic income, guaranteed livable income, you know, we talk about the economy. One of the pieces of the economy is that people who have lower incomes actually spend the highest percentage of their income, and they spend a lot of it locally. So they will spend their income in our local communities, and it circulates in the New Brunswick community. However, when you give tax breaks and write-offs and whatever else to big corporations, they have lawyers and support and loopholes to be able to take that capital offshore, put it in tax havens, and it's not circulating in our economy. And so this whole idea of trickle-down economics, you know, doesn't work, but we need the money circulating in our local economy. And so there's one of the arguments for basic income. We need to be supporting people. There's also been a lot of discussion about clawbacks. And so, you know, one of the clawbacks is being addressed, but there are other ones. And what this means when people have even small things like having groceries given to them by a family member because they're struggling to get by on this inadequate...
Members, could I just ask you to quiet down a bit? I'm trying to hear the speech. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are people who are struggling to get by. Their support levels from social assistance are not high enough, and a family member might give them groceries, might try to support them to supplement this, and it ends up in clawbacks. They get in trouble. They get cut off, and it's unacceptable. Again, it's, you know, this punitive way of functioning, and this needs to be addressed. Again, going back to human rights, you know, some of the people who are living in these households are children. And when it comes to rights, you know, there's a convention, the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, and governments continually fail to actually fully implement all of the rights that children should have and actually address them fully. And there's some child-friendly language to explain some of these conventions on the rights of the child, some of the articles. And one of them I want to read into the record is the third one. When adults make decisions, they should think about how their decisions will affect you. This is speaking to children. All adults should do what is best for children. Governments should help the people and places responsible for looking after children. And it talks about how governments have the responsibility to make sure that children's rights are respected, and that includes housing, that includes a decent standard of living, that includes many other things. And unfortunately, government after government does not take this responsibility seriously enough and does not go far enough. And so again, we can't have just small incremental changes. We need to go further in order to ensure that people are not living in poverty, that people have enough to eat, that people have adequate and safe housing. And so while there are some positive things here, I've heard from people in the community that yes, there's a step in the right direction, but it doesn't go far enough. And so there will be more questions when this goes to committee. But I want to say on the record that this certainly does not go far enough in terms of what is needed for people who have been made the most vulnerable in our society. So thank you very much for the time, Mr. Speaker.
The Opposition House Leader.